Veal chops taste tender in flavor and are quite lean, so they pair best with medium-bodied reds such as Pinot Noir, a Gran Reserva Rioja, Malbec, Merlot, Nero Diablo, Chianti Classico, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, or a Zinfandel. A full-bodied Chardonnay is also exceptional with veal chops, and you can get away with other white wines such as Pinot Gris or Riesling. A lot of things affect how your veal chops might taste. For example, how the calf is raised. If the calf is milk-fed, the flavor of veal chops might not be as pronounced. It won't taste like beef very much, but it'll still have a flavor to it. Whereas a grass-fed calf, it's going to taste a little more beefier. Veal chops are also difficult to cook a little bit sometimes too. If you cook them rare, they look pink and unappetizing, and there's no flavor really in them because the fats haven't really come out. There hasn't been enough cooking to bring those fatty flavors that carry the flavors through out just yet. And if you overcook them, they just taste incredibly dry, which is why a lot of people often accompany their veal chops with the sauce. So you want to cook your veal chops medium rare. For all of our pairings too, we're just talking about veal chops with a little salt and pepper or maybe a light sauce. Since the taste of veal chops is mild, if you put a sauce on it, that's going to totally change the taste of the meal. And you have to look more into what wine you would pair with that sauce versus what wine you would pair with veal. Veal is pretty expensive, so that's why we're going with salt and pepper or just a light sauce. Why pay all that money and just totally hide the tender flavors of your veal chops under it, is my logic with this pairing. Our first pairing is Burgundy and veal chop pairing. Burgundy is a Pinot Noir produced in the Burgundy region of France, and you'll find different tiers of Burgundy in terms of price and quality. So you'll get bottles that are more meant for table wine, and then there are bottles that will require a second mortgage on your house to enjoy. We'd suggest going mid-range in price, as the wine will be more expressive in its earthier flavors. A less expensive Burgundy is probably going to be a little bit too young to pair with veal chops, and it will come off as sappy and sweet. Burgundy is one of the more romantic styles of red wine, as it's light and fruity, but it has this earthier, poetic side, which is further highlighted by the tender veal chop flavors. I give this pairing 4.5 out of 5 stars. Our next pairing is Gran Reserva Rioja and veal chop pairing, and I give this pairing 4.5 out of 5 stars. Gran Reserva Rioja is a medium-bodied Spanish red wine and has lots of nice fruit flavors of blueberry, raspberry, and plum, along with notes of vanilla, chocolate, leather, cedar, and tobacco from the aging process. Gran Reserva Rioja has been aged for many years, so you get a lot of complex and expressive flavors that come out, and the simplicity of the veal chop flavors highlights the complex and earthier flavors of your Gran Reserva Rioja. Some Gran Reservas might be considered full-bodied, so you want to look for a more medium-bodied style. I feel there's plenty of examples of that on the market, but since Gran Reserva Rioja isn't that popular in North America, you might want to ask around wherever you buy wine for a medium-bodied Gran Reserva. Our third pairing is Nero Diablo and veal chop pairing. And Nero Diablo is a usually full to medium-bodied red wine from Italy, but it has this right balance of acidity and tannin that makes it a wonderful pair with veal chops. Unlike Burgundy, which we talked about above, Nero Diablo is not an elegant wine at all. It's very bold in its cherry, black cherry specifically, and plum flavors. But it has this earthy herbal flavor along with licorice, violet, mocha, and espresso notes that just go great with the tender flavors of veal chops. Again, you'll want to search for a wine that is a little more medium-bodied than full-bodied, and as Nero Diablo isn't that popular in North America, you will have to ask around if you are unfamiliar with this style of wine. Our fourth pairing is Malbec and veal chop pairing, and I give this 4 out of 5 stars. An Italian Malbec is my preference for veal chops. I find it's a little more velvety and silky on the tongue, and this complements the tender texture of veal chops. You could probably get away with a California Malbec or a Chilean Malbec as well. Malbec from France, it will pair up nice with veal chops, but I find it a little sharp in its tannin and a little too tart and savory for veal chop for my own personal preference, but it's something you might enjoy. Just with Argentinian Malbec, I just love the smoky plum and berry notes that an Argentinian Malbec offers. Malbec also has like a quick smoky finish, which is perfect because there isn't a lot of fat in veal chops, so the food and the wine finish pretty much at the same time in the mouth, which is something you always want. Neither the food or the wine overshadows or shows off more than the other. Our final pairing is Chardonnay and grilled veal chop pairing. Veal in and of itself, it's often considered a white meat because, again, the flavors are mild. They're not super beefy. They're not gamey like venison. They're just very mild. And some people say it tastes kind of like chicken, although I think they taste different, but I get what they're saying. It's a rather neutral meat. There's some fraud sometimes that happens in restaurants too, where they say they are offering like veal schnitzel, but they're just using pork to save money. In my 30 years of working in the restaurant industry, I've never worked for a restaurant that's done this, but I've had chefs tell me that their bosses have told them to do it before. I don't know if it's entirely true or not. I'm just mentioning it just to make a point that veal can sometimes taste neutral like chicken or sometimes like pork does. The reason Chardonnay works with grilled veal chop, in my opinion, is that the vanilla flavors of a full-bodied Chardonnay complement the grilled charred flavors of a veal chop. With Chardonnay, you're also going to get refreshing flavors of pineapple, papaya, and lemon that just help punctuate the tender veal chop flavors even more. I give Chardonnay 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is a good pairing. If you love white wine, you'll probably rank this a little bit higher, but for me, and I do love white wine, I just prefer the earthier flavors of a red wine with my veal chops. For more veal pairings, including more veal chop pairings or other veal dishes, be sure to check out my website. The details are below. I have a nice little database there. You just type in your food or your wine, and the database reports back with the food and wine pairings ranked. Until next time, cheers.